The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 889. And it is coming to you on Monday, the 22nd of January, 2018. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic, the offense of bigamy. But before getting into the topic, short preliminary remarks. Firstly, my deepest condolences go out to all families which have suffered recent bereavements, and in particular the Finley family of Redemption Sharp on the loss of Enroy Finley, an adult son of the family whose father, the renowned Calypsonian Sun Blaze, still soldiers on. My sympathy to the whole family, whom I know very, very well and who are very strong supporters of myself when I was parliamentary representative for that area. And today being the 22nd of January reminds me that in years gone by, this used to be the Discovery Day holiday. But somewhere along the line in the 80s it was changed from Discovery to Discovery and National Heroes Day, and continued to be a holiday until around 2001 or 2002, when it was formally abolished and National Heroes Day was put to the 14th of March. All right, you would notice that for the year, my new trend is to minimize the preliminary comments because they were getting out of hand. Some were extremely long, taking up nearly half the program time, so my preliminary remarks would be quite short unless circumstances dictate otherwise. Therefore, let us get into the topic, the offense of bigamy. Bigamy is an offense under the Criminal Code of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the bigamy is committed where a person being married marries for a second time, knowing full well that his former marriage has not been dissolved by a court of law, and knowing full well that his former spouse is still very much alive. I say that because the law gives two exceptions. Where a person has not heard anything from or about a spouse for 7 years or more, then that person really ought to seek a declaration by the court of the presumption of death of the spouse. But even in the absence of that declaration, that person could successfully defend himself or herself in a prosecution for bigamy. Or where the person genuinely believes on reasonable grounds that the former spouse is dead and gets married again, that person could mount a defense based on that. But I hardly need to say that that person would have to come very strong with his or her evidence in the belief that the former spouse is dead. So basically, for somebody who has gone abroad, say to the United States or Canada, England, elsewhere in the Caribbean, or in the wider world and gets married there lawfully, and then after a while comes back to St. Vincent pretending that he or she is a single person, and then goes through a ceremony of marriage here or anywhere else in the Caribbean for that matter, knowing full well that he or she is getting married a second time, then that person could be found guilty of the offense of bigamy. Or being married here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines or elsewhere, travels to another country pretending that he or she is unmarried and gets married in that country, then that person could be prosecuted for the offense of bigamy, unless it is a country in which it is lawful for a man to have several wives. And there are countries like that where polygamy is practiced, namely the ability for one man to have several wives. Interestingly enough, I know of no country on earth where a woman can lawfully have several husbands at the same time. So that is clearly discriminatory on behalf of men. But there are countries where men can marry several times, depending on their means and their social status and other factors, where the laws of those countries permit that to happen. But in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the rest of the Caribbean, we practice monogamy. That is, a man being married to one woman at any one time. Quite frequently, you come across a situation in which a person from St. Vincent who is married migrates to another country and gets married there, even though they have lawfully been married here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the marriage has not been ended. Some people think it is okay if, for example, you go to the United States and you want your stay. It is okay for you to arrange a marriage of convenience. You pay somebody to marry to you, an American citizen, marry to you so that you can get your papers and so on, and tell yourself, well, after a while you will then get a divorce and you will probably send back for your spouse here in St. Vincent and Grenadines and children. Well, if you do that, you run the risk of going to jail. And the penalty for the offense of bigamy in the laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines is 7 years imprisonment. So do not let anybody tell you, if you are married, that you can go to the United States or anywhere else and get married there to get your stay, and that after the marriage you can get a divorce and everything would be okay. You would be committing an offense against the laws of that country, and you would be triable in that country where you commit the offense of getting married a second time. Now, let me clarify something about which some people are mistaken. A divorce in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is in 2 stages. First of all, you can only be divorced in St. Vincent and Grenadines through the courts. You can go through a ceremony of marriage in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, become married, and if the circumstances so require, you can file for a divorce here. Now, if you file for a divorce and you go to court and all your papers are in order, the court pronounces a decree nisi, N-I-S-I. But you are not divorced when you leave the court or when the registrar signs the certificate for the decree nisi. The court, when it pronounces the decree nisi, would then give a period of time, usually 6 weeks, after which the decree nisi can become a decree absolute. It is that second paper which constitutes the end of the divorce process. That second paper is practically, you can call it your divorce certificate, the decree absolute. So that if you go to court here in St. Vincent and Grenadines as the petitioner, or indeed as the respondent, in an application to dissolve a marriage, and the judge pronounces the decree nisi, and nothing further is done, no further step is taken, even after the lapse of the 6 weeks or other period that the judge has given. No further paper is placed before the registry for the registrar to sign. In other words, all you have is the first paper, the decree nisi. You cannot consider yourself divorced and free to marry again. You have to make sure that you obtain the second divorce paper, namely the decree absolute. Now, there are technicalities surrounding that. If there are children of the marriage, then the rules say that when you get the decree nisi, arrangements then have to be made satisfactory to the court for the custody and the care and the control and welfare and maintenance of the children before that decree can be made absolute. But apart from those technicalities, one doesn't become divorced until you get that second paper. It's only when you get that that you are free to go and get married again. When a person gets married here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it is normally public knowledge. First of all, there's no such thing as being able to get married secretly here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because all marriages have to be witnessed by at least 2 persons. So a man and a woman cannot go and get married secretly by themselves without anybody knowing except the marriage officer. No. Of course, most marriages are held in a church where, as the saying goes, word and country knows that so and so and so and so got married. And we have a glorious tradition here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines of tooting vehicle horns as the wedding procession drives along. Long time days, weddings used to be glorious affairs, especially village weddings. You'd have the coconut branches being planted and nice arches being done and so on, and usually everybody has a lovely time. So I get back to the point where there is no such thing as a secret marriage. At least two witnesses have to sign a paper to say they witnessed, and that paper has to be signed by the marriage officer who would have conducted the ceremony of marriage to tie the nuptial knot between the husband and the wife. Incidentally, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it would appear that the law recognizes marriage as a union between a male and a female. But a few years ago, when we had the debate on the proposed new constitution, some persons suggested that even on the laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines as they stand now, some persons suggested that it is possible for two persons of the same sex to be lawfully married. That suggestion has not been tested in court. But I think the majority of legal opinion would hold that a proper interpretation of our laws would be that marriage is a ceremony between a man and a woman. I say that because same-sex marriages are becoming the norm in several countries. The last country I heard of which changed its laws to allow two persons of the same sex to be married was Australia, not more than 2 months ago. And as was predicted at the time we had our referendum debate, or the constitutional debate, some persons predicted that in time the countries of the Caribbean will come under serious pressure from powerful countries to change our laws to permit same-sex marriages. That, I believe, is a debate for the future. So to get back to the notion, when somebody is married here, normally it is a known fact. But when somebody is married abroad in a country with populations numbering the millions, then even though they may have the requirement for the marriage to be witnessed, who would know if somebody goes and gets married in Texas or Oklahoma or some other state in the Caribbean, Saskatchewan in Canada? So it is possible for persons who have intentions to get married abroad without anybody in St. Vincent knowing anything about it. When such a person returns to St. Vincent, it is only if that person publicizes the fact of his or her marriage that anybody would know. So let us say a Vincentian goes abroad, gets married quietly, not in Brooklyn where there are hundreds of Vincentians would probably know that he got married, but in some other state where there are no Vincentians at all, or very few. So he's secretly in inverted commas, married, comes back to St. Vincent, pretending to be single. And then in due course, gets in with a lady, proposes to her, and they go through a ceremony of marriage. That person, if a man, from the time he goes through that ceremony of marriage in St. Vincent, having been married in the United States or some other country abroad, but having falsely said on the form, the marriage form, that he is a bachelor, at least he is unmarried, that person would be in danger of being charged, if the truth is found out, with bigamy. Unless, as I said in the beginning, that person can successfully prove that he or she, he genuinely thought that the person to whom he was married was dead, or had no way of knowing or believing that the wife abroad was still alive. Now, on the other hand, a person may marry abroad, doesn't get a divorce abroad, comes back to St. Vincent, and then for genuine reasons want to get married here. So he wants to put an end to the foreign marriage into which he had contracted previously. But he has no marriage certificate. He has no documentation on which to base an application to the court, either for a declaration of presumption of death, or in which to know how to start divorce proceedings against the former spouse. He may have been married in one place and moved several times and lost track of the person to whom he was married. Now, such a person would have difficulty in establishing a legal end to the former marriage that he had contracted abroad. But until he gets that clarified, he can't get married here, no matter how much he has fallen in love with somebody here. They simply can't go through a ceremony of marriage once he was married abroad, and that marriage has not been shown to the satisfaction of the court to have been legally and completely ended in the country in which he had got married. In cases of difficulty, the person should seek legal advice. Maybe the lawyer might be able to apply to the court and might be able to establish to the satisfaction of the court that your marriage has ended, even though you haven't got all the proper papers. But that would be extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. So that if you go abroad or being abroad, get married, make sure you have a genuine original of the marriage certificate. Don't lose that. And if by chance you get divorced abroad, make sure you hold on to that certificate that proves that you got a divorce. It isn't easy to get documentation from foreign countries when you return to St. Vincent and Grenadines. Here, there's no problem getting a document because we just have one registry. And if you got married or divorced in St. Vincent and Grenadines, the particulars would be there in the registry. Just takes a few days to search to find it. But in foreign countries, you will have any number of places that are lawfully entitled to keep records. One state may have several counties, and each county may have a registry. So that getting documentation as to your marital status abroad can be extremely difficult. If at the end of the day you cannot satisfy the court that having been married you are now divorced or your marriage has ended, then you're in serious, serious difficulties. Now, of course, as we know, a marriage is lawfully ended in several ways. A marriage is ended by death of one of the parties to the marriage, or by 7-year absence, followed by an application to the court and a declaration of presumption of death. That is a declaration where the court is satisfied that the other party must have died. Of course, before you do that, you have to prove to the court that you have made all proper inquiries, published notices in the papers, and so on and so on. Apart from other decrees which you can get from the court, a decree of nullity which annul your marriage. Nullity is different from divorce. A decree of nullity means that the court has pronounced that the marriage never took place. But a decree of divorce is a pronouncement by the court that the marriage took place but has been ended. And among the factors which enable one to get a decree of nullity is if you are not married by a qualified marriage officer. Suppose somebody pretends to be a marriage officer and goes through a ceremony of marriage. Well then, if he's not a lawful marriage officer, that marriage is not regarded in law as having taken place at all. There's another circumstance in which one can get a decree of nullity. If you can prove that the other party to the marriage has willfully refused to consummate the marriage. And out of sensitivity for the younger listeners, I would not explain that, but the adults will understand what I mean when I say that the law regards willful refusal to consummate the marriage as a ground on which the court can pronounce that the marriage was nullified. So to round up, persons who are married once during the lifetime of their spouses and until that marriage has been formally dissolved by a court of law are not free to go and get married a second time. Otherwise, they'll be in danger of going to prison for up to 7 years for the offense of bigamy. Okay? All right, so that is all from this program of The Law and You, program number 889. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday, DB, for another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. Do have a very pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls. I am pleased to say that I am making good recovery. Thank all who have inquired about me and who have said prayers for me. Thank you so very much. And above all, thanks to the good Lord. May He continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.